Hello and welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. I'm your host, Scott Minton. Today we're back in the Brock Bourbon Bar and we are drinking a little bit of High West whiskey. And welcome to the show. We have Miss Terry Lindley. And Terry, you're like the jack of all trades, master of none, got all this crazy good stuff going on with you and everything else. And before we dive into all these nice expressions that you guys were so awesome to send us, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself? How did you get here? How did you get from, college, the biochem degree to at High West today?
Sure. Gosh, a lot's happened. Right now, I am director of sensory and new product development for Constellation Brands. And my journey to get here was one that I never expected was possible when I was in college. Back in college, I thought I wanted to go into pharmaceuticals and, got my biochemistry degree. However, I ended up living in Napa Valley, with my husband who was chefing and cooking, and I wondered, what am I going to do in Napa Valley? I mean, I can get to the Bay Area, but that's a long commute. And then I learned that there's wine chemistry. So I started off in an analytical lab, running all these cool instruments, servicing, all the wineries in the Napa Valley area. Then I moved into more of an enology position, working at individual wineries. The last winery I worked at was Chateau Montelena Winery, which I absolutely loved. But in 2016, I made that decision to try something new and move out to Utah and work on whiskey at High West. So since then, I've had the opportunity to grow and learn and expand my purview into some of our other spirits portfolios as well under Constellation.
Really neat. So have you ever been part of the distilling team, or has most of yours been more around the sensory level and more around tasting, blending, those type of things? And then I guess a good segue with that piece is as well as how does the wine business translate to the whiskey business for that?
Sure. So my focus has always been on the sensory and blending to flavor profiles, blending for complexity, how we can use different lots of whichever spirit we're working with at that time. As far as translating from wine to spirits, I would say that, even from my biochemistry degree and my college experience and through wine, I gained that knowledge of how to work in, how to operate, and how to run a laboratory. And so that's, what I do here. I have a team that works in our lab, builds blends for us to evaluate, request samples, things like that, and think about things with a more, critical questioning perspective.
My brain is not functioning at all, and I know that's a real shock to
I was about to say that's pretty
yeah,
normal.
I saw your eyes over there, Scott. It's not because of the alcohol; it's just because I think I overthink everything. I'm trying to understand from a lab perspective when you are going with your team. Are you almost having to work backwards? Like in your minds, do you have something you think, oh, it would be great to have this characteristic profile or something, and then you have to kind of deconstruct it and figure out how to get it there, or do you start at one point and then move forward to get to something that you want to do? I don't know if that question makes sense at all.
That's a great question. And I would say there's two different approaches. When we are working on blend maintenance for a product or a SKU that already exists, we have a gold standard historical control that we're trying to match that flavor profile. So we can go back into our inventory, taste all of the eligible whiskey lots, and determine which of those are going to be the best opportunities to blend and help us get to that end product. When we are creating something that's new to world, we usually start by going into the inventory and tasting everything and seeing where we get most excited, which lots are most exciting to us, have interesting complexity, something that would make a great base versus something we want to use as a spice blender. And start looking and building from that ground up, even though we might have an objective in mind that we want, minimum 10-year-old, or we want this to be a wine barrel finish or a spirit barrel finish, something like that. It's still fun to have the opportunity to kind of start from scratch with a blank slate.
Awesome. I do have kind of like a follow-up with that question. High West has been known for, especially the Midwinter's Night Dram, that blending of the wine. Have you encouraged or affected some of those blends and or concepts? Because I know they're starting to do a lot more wine finishes on a number of their products. And have you contributed towards that in?
Absolutely. And, one of the contributions that I brought coming from the wine industry was, having access to and knowledge of a bunch of different wine varietals that we hadn't used, for example, in our Barrel Select program yet. And so sourcing some different varietals that hadn't been used in that program was, something new. Also, just different ways to look at how we can, bring in a little bit more interest on our seasonal products. So, for example, Midwinter Night's Dram or the Prisoner's Share. What could we do to change that ruby port barrel to tawny port barrel ratio to, drive a little bit more complexity in one direction or another? One of my favorite stories is when Brendan Coyle, our master distiller, and I were sitting at the Act 9 Midwinter Night's Dram release dinner. And we were talking about, well, what are we going to do for Act 10? The 10th release, this is a really big deal. How are we going to make this different and special? And so I made the suggestion, well, we've always been using ruby port and tawny port barrels for this. Let's bring in a third port barrel, the white port barrel, and then we can have this trifecta of all these port barrels in one blend. Well, when it came down to it, and we were going through sensory, and we did get those white port barrels, the white port barrels were so beautiful that the decision was made to pull those apart and bottle that as a separate encore bottling. That was an amazing release, something very special and very limited at the time as well. That's another example of one of those things where we had this great idea. It went a different way than I thought it would, but it's a cool story nonetheless.
So I will say my big thing is I've been such a massive fan of your all's rise, just in general. And then you guys, I can't tell you how shocked I was, and because I was a little leery when I saw it at first, but the Casa Noble that came out was just, it hit so different than what I was expecting. For one, just the finish was I don't know, the Amber on it can be so hit and miss. You can overdo it really easily. So when we tried that and we were able to taste through that one, I was just like, oh my God, these guys really just crushed it with this bottle.
Yeah, it was insane.
And I think that was kind of the mass consensus too. So as we dive a little bit more in, let's talk through. So like I said, I threw you a curveball. I actually have the current Bourye that you guys sent us and the last one. So we're going to try both of them and kind of compare and contrast. But before we do that, we're going to dive into the High Country. And I know that you're probably pretty excited about this one because I know it's one of your latest releases. But let's talk a little bit more about that single malt and how did y'all get to that point?
Sure. And so let's see, I think 2019 was the first year that we produced that High Country single malt. It was a small release, distillery only. I think it was just a few hundred cases. And we were so excited to be, blending and bottling our own, 100% High West own make for our malt. We were so proud of it, and we still are. And since then, some of the ways that, what we learned in the whole process is that we wanted to get a little bit more age, a little bit more, depth of character, maybe a little bit more new cooperage as well. And so as the years progressed, we worked through our portfolio in a way so that we could drive a little bit more age and new barrel character coming into this blend. Additionally, while that first blend, we used some ruby port barrels for some finishing, we expanded that into some tawny port barrels, some different sherry barrels as well, Amontillado, Pedro Jimenez, Oloroso sherry, to try and drive more of that oxidative and fruit complexity in the blend. So just more layers, something a little bit more interesting there.
Yeah. I mean, the nose on this thing is just fantastic. I'm just trying it's got such a delicate fruit note. I'm really trying to figure that one out. Johnny's usually better at the fruit notes, man, than me. Johnny, what are you getting over there, brother?
I just can't get over the fact it's a 10 out of 10 nose.
It really is. It's a fantastic nose.
I mean, I'm kind of almost getting, it's like a mixture of wildflowers and sourdough / yeast.
It is definitely
kind of like what I'm getting on it.
It's definitely yeasty, but
there's an underlying fruit note to it, and I'm trying to figure it out because we go through it doesn't seem like a stone fruit.
It's almost pear, but it doesn't almost like a Bosch or a Bartlett.
Yeah, Bosch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
A little sweeter. Yeah.
About golden raisins. That was the first thing that I smelled on
the
it.
nose.
Honey and sourdough bread.
Oh yeah, I do get a little bit of that raisiny smell.
Yeah, I was actually starting to go down that raisin route, but I was going, it's kind of darker, it's like that. But you're right, that kind of white / golden raisin is kind of a lot softer raisin than the typical ones.
That's not one that typically jumps in my mind because I rarely eat a golden raisin. So it's like when people say, "Oh, speculoos." I'm like, "Who eats speculoos?" Like, I don't get that. Like, when I go to Switzerland, I eat speculoos. It's the only time ever I ever eat that stuff.
You just made up that word.
What, speculoos?
Yes.
No, that's
not a
legit.
thing. Shut up, Nick.
The best is speculoos butter. Like, they actually cream it out.
Are you kidding me
like,
right
no,
now?
it's like Nutella. They literally like the Swiss love that stuff. Listen, there's a lot
It's kinda
of
like
weird
Vegemite.
stuff in Europe.
The Australians like Vegemite, but nobody else does.
Yeah.
So the guy you can't see would agree with the raisin. And I grew up with eating raisins every day for lunch. And so there's no question about that.
Yeah.
That is weird. I did not
that
pick
taste.
that up on the initial nosing, but once I sampled it, let it go around my palate for a bit, and went back to the nose, I can definitely see where that raisin comes from.
I'll tell you the other thing, like the legs on this thing is just crazy. I mean, it's hanging to the glass. It's all over the place. And especially considering it's like 90 proof or less. Actually, it's what, 89 and some change, 89.6?
Yep.
It's only 89?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh, point six. Don't forget the point six.
Yeah.
first pull, toffee, heavy toffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Some toffee. Maybe just a light, like almost like a light butterscotch. It's got a little bit of that richness too.
One of my favorite notes on the palate is that the filling from a bear claw, that kind of nutty pastry filling on the inside of a bear claw. That's one of the things that I attribute to our high country single malt, and I put a lot in this blend.
This is how we know Tara is fancier than us. She's talking about bear claws and golden raisins here. You've been in California too long. I don't know if that's where you were born, but you've obviously been there too long. You're giving
I was there
giving
a
me
while.
bougie toasty notes.
Yeah, the Pop-Tarts don't exactly sound as sophisticated.
Yeah, us Midwesterners here, we're over here just gulping whiskey left and right, and you're giving off hints of. I love it, but that's why I love these experiences. When you get down, and you talk to people, and you're like, oh yeah, that is what that is, and like, because you're trying to put a thumb on it. You know, I've traveled the world a little bit, but you know.
And that kind of piggybacks a question that I have. Does your palate, has it evolved over time? Do you find that it stays the same? Have you picked up new things that maybe when you started in the spirits game you didn't get before? Like how has it affected just your own personal ability to pick things out?
It let me piggyback that. Like, most women don't like whiskey. So how did that transition happen with that?
Most women, I think, are better at picking that out than men are.
Oh, I'd agree with that. I think they have much better palates.
I'll answer the whiskey question first, and then about the sensory.
All right.
So, if I'm being completely honest, I remember my very first sensory when I came to High West on March 7th, 2016, and I was in the little lab with Master Distiller Brendan Coyle, and we were sipping whiskey. And if I'm being honest, I hadn't really sipped whiskey before that point. And all I could think about was, please don't choke, please don't choke, please don't gag with that high proof in my mouth. And, it went fine. Nothing memorable happened there. But, from that point forward, I started building that lexicon, that vocabulary in my head. And so by doing sensory with other people and hearing what they said, I could start saying, okay, I see that too. And then pick that out as I started evaluating different samples of whiskey. Also, just kind of working through one of those lexicons and looking at words when you're getting started, just to help you make those associations between, giving you that trigger of a word to assign to an aroma or a flavor that you're experiencing is very helpful. And then over time, that starts to become second nature.
Now, as you're talking about sensory, we are fortunate to have being kind of like the whiskey capital of the area. And so we get to visit many distilleries for tours, tastings, and everything along those lines. As you are part of that sensory group, there are a lot of distilleries, when all they go through their tastings, they like to associate different things while you're doing the tasting. We have one distillery that will give you actually little sensory aroma balls that has different dried potpourri or things inside there. They go shake it, sniff it, and then take a drink, and then see what you get from that. Are you looking to integrate possibly any of that with the High West or the High West experience of trying to do samplings on your tours?
So our hospitality side of the business does have some of those elements where you can experience the individual sensory notes for specific products. So they have incorporated that into their experience over in our one ship distillery.
Cool. I wasn't sure if that'd be something that you might play a role in because you're like going, hey, this could really associate with this, from a sensory standpoint. That's awesome.
Right. And just looking at it from the perspective of, for example, on double rye, clove, eucalyptus, cinnamon, just giving people even, some of those elements to help them identify those in the whiskey is really helpful.
So I have a question. It's, there aren't as many women per se on different podcasts and different things that you can think about. However, I love what women have brought to the bourbon industry. I feel like their palates really bring something different, different perspective. I'm part of Bourbon Women, and so I just embrace it all the time. But how do you hone in onto your skills?
So, part of it is just, with time and experience, having confidence in what I do. And, when I started, I was the second woman at High West in operations. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, I was the first woman on the sensory team as well. And so when I was sitting at the table with other men at the table, I had different perspectives than them, but I wasn't afraid to share them because, the thing that's great about sensory is that, we all have different ways that we perceive it. So we have over 1,000 genes that codes for how we perceive aroma alone. And so the way that you smell strawberry is going to be different from the way that I smell strawberry. And, it's just having that diversity in evaluating anything, any whiskey lot or any blend is, really important to be able to try and get that, that full picture of what you're looking at. And so, that when you put something out, in a bottle and put it in the market, these are all the things that people might experience out of it. And a lot more than we're even getting out of our sensory room as well. Mm-hmm. And so to go back to, being a woman in whiskey and sensory, a lot of it came from just, having the confidence and owning my ability, but also, knowing where I needed to improve and learn as well. And so, I know that, now when I am doing sensory with my colleague, Isaac Winter, our director of distilling, we've been doing sensory together for so long that there's certain things that we look for and we can pick out and we can say the same thing. But then there's other things where, we have our own perspective on how we're perceiving it and, getting different notes out of it. So it's really cool to see, I love seeing how everyone, explains the sensory that they're perceiving.
When you do the sensory tastings and things, you do it at a lower proof. I've heard when I worked at Old Forester for a while, and I heard that their tasting was done at 40 proof, and it made a difference to them to pick out various notes. I'm curious whether that's kind of an industry thing or whether that was just their thing.
So for us, when we're looking at new make, we do always look at our new make samples that come off the still at 40 proof. And that allows us to better identify if there's any flaws or anything that we need to be concerned about in there. When we're looking at our finished product, or I should say, final products, aged products, we typically look at those at bottling proof because that's typically going to be, if someone drinks it neat, that's how they're going to experience it. Occasionally when we have single barrels or something that's a higher proof, up, well over 100, we do like to add a little bit of water to those to proof those down a little bit, just so we don't blow out our palates or have, too much ethanol, just kind of make us less sensitive to the sensory. And so it all kind of depends on what we're looking at.
So kind of tying in some of the sensory items and trying to get consistency. High West is really known for being almost all their products are some sort of blends. And, everything from, campfire, Bourye rye, even double rye, even so, I think it was at the American Prairie is still a blend at a certain level. How do you help? Your role is probably helping trying to keep that consistency because there's a lot of times that you have certain batches and you run out of those certain set of barrels of that from that pot, and then you have to move in and add more onto it. what is your process for trying to keep it as consistent as possible? Because it's very consistent and very good.
Thank you. So, what we have developed is a system where we have identified gold standard blends, and these blends were all created back in, anywhere from 2016 to 2019. And so we've gone through the sensory and looked at, many lots that were bottled across the year and decided these blends exemplify exactly what double rye is, or exactly what the bourbon is, or campfire. And this is what we want to target when we go and make this blend the next time. And so we use that as a control as we go through the process of blending, different lots together. And so while the blend ratios might look different from year to year, our target is to hit that same flavor profile from year to year, no matter what those ratios look like. And so as long as we have that gold standard to compare to, we can get there through sensory by comparing to that gold standard.
All right, let's move on to the Bourye rye, the 25A24.
I'm going to need a little more, Scott. First of all, you poured very light. He always does this, ladies. I just want you to know. He always pours light for me.
There's always an excuse for Johnny.
We need to have Barbara pour.
Anyway, back to the Bourye rye. Man, I tell you, I'm such a massive fan of these. My first delve into the finished world, I was a massive midwinters. I remember his batch 1, 2, and 3, and my mind was blown. I would have been like, why are they putting wine with bourbon? I was like, I'm not gonna like this. I swore to everybody, this is gonna be awful. And then I drank it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so good. And then when the Bourye rye hit, I was like, why are they blending bourbon and rye? Why are they doing the stuff they're doing? And then I drank the Bourye rye, and I was like, oh my god, these are so good. So now it's the thing. Anytime the Bourye ryes come out, I'm all about them. Now the nose on this thing is just fantastic. I've been cheating going back between the last one and this one. And just the rich and the baking spice, the amount of baking spice that comes off these things is just unreal.
Yeah, I get apples and baking spice. I'm trying to nail down the baking spice, but
yeah, apple. It's a little bit of cardamom, maybe a touch of clove. But dude,
darn, I wanted to say cardamom.
I think there's also just a hint of ginger.
There might be, but the nose on these things are amazing.
It's comforting. It's delicious. But
We got half a bottle now.
It's also comforting. You are such an exaggerator.
And he didn't give it back.
Well, no. Want it closer in case my glass empties by itself again.
Magically empties.
Magically, yeah.
So do you find that sweet spot for a lot of your stuff is in that kind of 90 to 100 proof? Is that just kind of where you guys have found that's where just the sweet spot of where you're at?
Yeah, and I think in the beginning, the idea was, creating products at that 92 proof. Most of the products were created at that proof to begin with. And that brought forward a lot of that. It was a good balance between the ethanol and the distillate character. We wanted something bold in your face that stands up in cocktails. And that was kind of where that started. And now, yes, we do have our high country down, at 89.6, but everything else really is, 92 up to, I think, 105 for that noble share. And then sometimes even higher than that for the single barrel selects. So we really like our whiskey to be assertive, something that, if you want to add water to it or put it over rocks, that's fine. But, we want to give you something, a nice punch to start with.
Yeah, caramel, a little bit of vanilla, just all that baking spice. And I'll tell you the other thing that's always just impressed me is that rarely do I get mint off of your all's flavor profiles. That's the one thing, as much as I love rye, mint is something that I'm not a massive fan of. And then people are like, well, why do you like rye? So many ryes are mint forward. I'm like, I don't know, but it's just, so when I find one that doesn't have it, and I'm just like, oh, this is it right here. It's the sweet spot.
Unfortunately, there are enough of those that we can enjoy rye without that.
I'm getting some of that orange chocolate malt.
The Terry's chocolate oranges?
Yeah. Just delicate, but both flavors are there, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really
For
good.
me, I get a really nice bergamot citrus note and some dark chocolate truffles, kind of along those same lines. Caramelized peach is another one.
You're going to think me strange. I also get a little maple or maple syrup off it. I don't think it's quite maple syrup, because that'd be way too sweet. But it's almost kind of like a little maple.
So it also it reminds me a little bit of Muse. I want to say it's like around Christmas time. They do the Majescas, but they add like some kind of like chocolate orange on the outside. So it kind of reminds me of that a little bit too.
Can you talk about the mash bill at all, or is that proprietary information?
Sure, we do have that information. So we got with this release, well, since 2022, we have had our own High West rye in the blend. So that is 80% rye, 20% malted rye. So we're very proud to have High West rye that is a minimum of 10 years old. We also have MGP mash bills, the 95.5 rye mash bill. We also have the 21% rye on the bourbon and the 36% rye for bourbon as well. And then another Kentucky mash bill that is 78 corn, 10 rye, and 12 malted barley. So tried to build a lot of complexity here with what we had in our inventory to work with.
It's a lot of corn and a lot of rye.
Yeah. Little malted barley.
Just a kiss. So have you guys experimented at all with the 5149? Like they're so few and far between on the MGP mash bill, the 51% rye, 49% malted barley. Like I've found that like when I find them, especially like I'm out doing tastings with master distillers, things like that, I just love them, but they're so rare. And I don't know if you guys have played with that at all.
So we have not tried that in any large quantities for our source whiskey. However, we have played around with different mash bills on our own High West still, on our pot still. And, we have a bunch of experiments that are aging right now. So in the next couple of years, we'll have some more feedback on that.
So I need to fly out and we'll just drill.
Absolutely.
Drill and fill is what I like to call it. Drill the barrel, fill the Glencairn, drill and fills.
How much of the budget can we utilize for that for the rest of us, Scott?
That the budget's blown. As soon as I go out there, it's blown. But listen, we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So Isaac said we could stay at the hotel. I don't know if he meant that or not, but he said it.
All right, I'm going to ask a question that might be conflicting for you. So far, what is your favorite High West product?
So up until recently, I would have answered that by telling you that it's what I'm working on right now because, I'm always really involved in what I'm working on. So right now I'm working on our next barreling for the Prisoner's Share that will be released next year. Super excited about it. However, I am most proud of the Noble Share that we recently released. That is the rye blend that is finished in the Casa Noble Marquez de Añejo barrels and some Amburana barrels. I love the complexity that drives. I think it's absolutely beautiful and stunning. I appreciate all the nuances you get from the rye whiskey, the agave, and the cinnamon stick from the Amburana, which is just enough to give you just a little bit of complexity there. And so that's the one that I have now earmarked as my favorite whiskey that I have had.
Hey, it's all good.
We did a review of that bottle as well as the new Midwinter Dram release and the Bourye from 2024. I think a couple weeks ago it might have gone up on the air or so. It was recently.
Semi-recently.
But, and everyone knows, the listeners know, and the group teases me about it because I'm a Midwinter Dram fanatic. I love everything about it. I even have the full, you were talking about your Act 10. I have the entire 6-bottle set. Yeah. And really proud of that. But the Casanova, it dethroned it, and it was maybe the best thing that I've ever had. So, sláinte and cheers to you because it was incredible. I wish I could see. I haven't seen it ever anywhere outside of the bottle that you graciously sent. So, thank you for that.
Now I know the last year's Bourye has been open a little bit longer, and I will say the one difference that I see, because they're very very similar, is that there's a little bit more of a floral note that comes through on that 2024 versus the 2025.
One of the things that we did a little bit different between those 2 years is that this year with 2025, we took the liberty to add a little bit more rye into the blend. So a higher percentage of rye than last year. And we like to do that with Bourye and our seasonal limited releases because we want them to evolve and change a little bit, kind of like a vintage of wine, and be a little bit different and interesting every year. We have our products that we want to keep the same every time and keep consistent, but Bourye is one of those that just, it's fun to highlight the different notes and the special lots of whiskey that we have to work with each year.
So that's kind of like your almost like plaything. You're evolving each year. You're trying to up the game each year.
Yeah, exactly. Because every year the whiskey tastes a little bit different. You have another year. You've got a new lot that's just now 10 years old, and where it's been in the warehouse, and what mash bill it is. So we have a lot of variables that can present themselves in opportunistic ways for us to create complexity and interesting blends.
What's your percentage of bourbon versus rye in these, generally speaking?
So it's always a majority of bourbon in the Bourye and a minority of rye.
So my wife is not a whiskey drinker. If she was, I'd be broke because I couldn't afford to buy any more than I already buy. But the one thing that she did say to me was she's like, I don't like the fact that they changed the label on the Bourye. Because the last one, I guess it was like, 2 iterations ago, they had the actual whole rabbit with the little antlers and stuff. It was super cute. My wife's like, I love that one. But when I brought these out, she was like, I don't like that they did that.
It's the face now, the
Yeah.
jackalope. The jackalope. It's more of just the straight on face of the
Yeah.
jackalope.
Yep. No, I like it fine. I like the jackalope. Just give me the whiskey in the bottle. That's all I care about.
Yeah, it doesn't need a label.
That's right. It doesn't even need a label. The bottles are beautiful enough. That blown glass look and the etching. I mean, High West always kills it. So
Yeah, about to say I still remember from whenever we did an interview with Isaac. How they taught us about the reasoning for the cork, in the bottle. If the owners wanted to be able to bite it off in like the old West tavern and then pour themselves a drink if they only had one hand.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about the market and how that kind of affects the process in the lab. Where do you see High West fitting in the next, say, 5 to 10 years of the market? Because it's its own animal, and sometimes does things that you don't predict. So I was curious to see how much of that determines the process of going into the sensory side.
That's a really great question. And I think that, we will always be true to brand. And with High West, our brand ethos is that, we're bold, unapologetic, something that stands alone. It's complex, it's interesting and unique. And regardless of what we are delivering, we will always follow those guidelines as our North Star. And, with whatever the market does, I have complete confidence that we can develop blends at to fill any niche in the market, based upon we have a very diverse and healthy inventory that will allow us to work with whiskeys of any age and blend. And so not knowing what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, I would just hang my hat on the fact that we're going to be true to our brand and keep delivering bold, big whiskeys that stand up great in cocktails. I like to drink them neat usually, but if I am going to have a cocktail, it's going to be a double rye old fashioned. And,
excellent choice. I mean, that double rye holds up so well in an old fashioned.
it does.
So one finish that I found recently, and it's not really that recently, it's really everybody that's done it has done it a little different. And there have been some that have hit it out of the park. And I think you guys would be one of those people to do it. Have you guys looked at all at VDN? VDN, Vino de Orange. It's like a white wine macerated with oranges. Yeah.
We have done some single barrel selects with that.
Oh, okay. I've not seen any out and about, so that's the reason I was wondering if you guys have looked at some kind of master blending of those type of products or things to that nature.
Yeah, there are a handful of single barrels somewhere out there in the market. I don't know where they all landed.
You're holding out on me.
Word some really subtle orange character, but also a little bit of oxidative character with the ones that we had as well. So they were really beautiful. It was great. I don't know that I would never say never. At the moment, we don't have any plans to do anything on a larger scale, but we like to keep those, experimental, really unique things in our single barrel program.
Yeah, there's another one that just recently hit too, the Moscatel, the Spanish sweet wine.
We've done some of those as well too.
All right.
And that is beautiful.
Evidently, I just don't live close enough.
Yeah.
I'll have to say, I love white wine finishes on whiskey. I think they are the unsung hero of the finishing category as a whole. And the white wines bring forward such beautiful nuances and complexities that, red wine is great too, but look to the white wine for something when you want to sip it slow and appreciate it, drink it neat, and just go through all those layers of the florals and the fruits and everything a white wine can bring to a whiskey.
Yeah. Steven says this a lot, and it's one of the things we give him credit for. Like, I feel like sometimes dark wines can overtake the spirit, whereas those light white wines really enhance the flavor. Because it just a nice, delicate boost of what you're getting off the whiskey itself.
I have a friend in California who has generously sent me 2 different iterations of single barrel double rye finished in muscat barrels, and I will be the first to say.
Did you say
and everybody
muskrat
here will-
barrels?
Huh?
So did you say muskrat barrels?
Muscat.
I know. I was messing with you.
That would be Kentucky, Scott.
And everyone here will tell you that I do not like finished product, but those were freaking amazing, and nobody else knows about them here locally because I didn't share. But they were incredibly good. It was from some store near Long Beach, California, and unfortunately, I haven't gotten the last. I don't know if they've stopped doing them or what, but he hasn't sent me any in a couple of years.
So now we found out the legend is holding out on me.
Some friend.
Yeah. Friends like that, who needs enemies?
Do you have any opinions, good or bad, on ice wine finishes?
We have not tried that yet. I haven't tried one, so I do not have an opinion, but it's something I would absolutely experiment with.
Okay.
Just from anything else experimental or things that might be on the horizon that you're kind of dabbling in right now that you're kind of excited about. I know you could probably say very limited about it, but from like a possible coming up here in the next few quarters, have anything special planned?
Sure. So later this year, we will have we will be releasing another bottled and bond. It will be our 3rd bottled and bond release. However, it will be our first bourbon bottled and bond release. And so, 100% High West rye. High West bourbon. So we're excited to have a different mash bill out there. Our first 2 releases were rye. And so that is something we're very excited about. We do have, some experimental barrel finishes in our single barrel program, which, we're going to see how those turn out first before we release what those are. And, as I mentioned earlier, I'm working on the next round of our prisoner share, which we will be barreling here in the next few months. So it will get released next year. But we did just bottle this year's prisoner share, and it is absolutely beautiful. I'm so excited for it to get out there.
Go back and smell number 1, the high malt, you guys. I mean,
I can't,
dude. It's just turned completely fruit bomb. Like it's like Johnny. I mean, it just the nose has just opened up so much. And with all fairness, I didn't crack them before I came over because I didn't want the guys to think like, oh, Scott's been over drinking it all without us. And plus, that wasn't my initial reaction on camera, but
which we would have 100% thought that.
Oh, absolutely,
so,
100%. I know you would have. But man, this thing's just the nose is amazing, Tara.
I'm going
Thank
back
you.
to the 2025 Bourye rye, and that spicy note is so much more prevalent in that to me than the 2024.
Yep.
It's so nice.
Yep.
When you're talking about the high country, now just the nose to me is like Frosted Flakes.
I could get kind of that. It's super sweet. It is. It's got so much sugar, like sugary sweet notes coming
And
off.
I've had a few single malts recently, and I've really come to enjoy them. I mean, I'm a bourbon person first and foremost, but this high country is wonderful. I was in Tucson in March and came back with a mesquite smoked single malt. I've had a couple other ones recently. It's just those things really give off a lot of flavor that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, single malts, when done right, are terrific. My problem is that I do not like peated anything. Don't like scotch. Don't like peated scotch. Don't. So when I get that heavy peat off those malted ones, I'm just like, whoa, I just can't go there. It's like drinking an IPA for me. Like I love beer. I can drink lots of beer, but I do not do IPAs either.
I don't know. For some reason, campfire has always hold a special light in my heart. And, I know that, I think in some of the flyers for Bourye, it's always enjoyed, around a campfire. It's hard to get Bourye around here pretty regularly, but we can get campfire. So, and I've shared that around the campfire a lot with a few friends in the neighborhood. They've really enjoyed it too.
Waterfront wine and whiskey. Wine.
Plug.
They've got it.
About to say, man's are giving people plugs. I tell you,
One thing I'm curious about, Tara, I think a lot of folks, they think so positively and romanticize the bourbon or the rye making distilling industry. It at the end of the day, it is still a job, and I'm sure it has its frustrations or things that don't go as expected or planned. Is there something that like you can share about that side of it, where either it was frustrating that a lot didn't go the way that you wanted, or maybe something that for people interested in getting into the industry, that they can prepare themselves to experience, that it's not all like sunshine and rainbows and you're all just having a grand time, getting drunk in the lab, but like it's actually, it can be hard and frustrating, or have its problematic side too.
she's going to tell you they just get happy and get drunk in the lab.
Then what the hell have I been doing with my life the whole time? Jesus.
Well, just to reassure you, we do spit when we're doing sensory in the lab. So, it doesn't get too fun in there. But, I think that I've been doing this for a while now. And, just coming every day with the attitude of, I might have to solve a problem today that I'm not expecting to solve, really helps. I've learned so much over the years by things not going the way I expected them to. And that has helped me, be a better, blender and sensory expert as I, move through my career. And, for example, sometimes when we are creating blends, we, pull a bunch of samples out of the inventory, depending on the size that we're working on, the target, how many cases we're going to build. We might, sample from 6 barrels of one lot and make a representative blend to try and, emulate, this is what this lot looks like. 4 barrels from this size lot and, make a representative blend there and put them together. And then sometimes when we do the actual large scale dump, it tastes a little bit different. And so that's the point where we have to make some decisions. Do we need to, how do we get back to our target? How can we steer back on course? Or does this steer too far? Or sometimes it's serendipitous and it's even better than it was in the lab. And so, I think that's one of those examples of there is a lot of that aspect of you never know what's going to happen on any given day. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to problem solve and then to learn from it and go forward.
All right. So when you're not drinking High West products, what is Tara sipping on?
That was about to be my question.
Sorry, I stole it, Legend.
I like to say that I only drink things that begin with a W: wine, whiskey, and water. So,
Fair.
But I will say I've been to Mexico quite a few times this year, and I have been trying a lot more mezcals and tequilas, and so that's something that has gotten pretty interesting to me right about now. So I am starting to build a little bit more of an inventory at home with those types of spirits, but typically if it's not whiskey or a mezcal, it's going to be a wine. I'm kind of in a white wine stage right now as temperatures are warming up a little bit. It just feels a little bit more springy for me.
Yeah. So let's dive into that piece of it. I don't typically talk tequila because it's not necessarily my favorite spirit, but I have been drinking a little bit more mezcal, like aged product, things like that. And it's weird to me how the older the plant is, the more complexity that comes out of the taste of that product. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that kind of dives into what you guys do from a blending aspect?
So I think that what's interesting, and I just have started learning a little bit more about the production of the mezcal. But, with the different plants and as you're getting more sugars in the plant, you have essentially that's going to affect what you get on the other side of fermentation. And there's other elements, with every producer for fermentation and how controlled or uncontrolled it is that is going to, impact that as well. And so I think that, I don't know that I've tried enough to be able to answer your question very well, but I think that I do recognize these differences across the different mezcals that I've tried, and I would like to learn more about that as I try more.
Gotcha.
I think there's going to be a tequila finish here coming soon from High West.
I got an inkling that might be something that's in the works.
Speaking of future
I'm all for it.
products, I had a pitch for you that I thought about last night in honor of Val Kilmer's passing and his iconic performance as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. I just didn't know if there was any. Why are you making that face for? You're about ready to say something.
No. I'm loving where you're going because I love Doc Holliday.
I just didn't know how fitting it would be that maybe there would be a special one-off release of that. Legally, I don't know if you could like commemorate it to him, but just to honor that spirit of High West with kind of a Tombstone something, considering that role that he gave was one of cinema's greatest performances. I think it would be really appropriate to have something.
A great question. It sounds like a good Instagram.
Even if it's one bottle that could come to me and that I would pay whatever for, I would do it. Totally. Poll Instagram maybe. I don't know. But just a random thought that I had. Sorry.
Doc Holliday Tombstone bottle.
The holiday. The High West holiday. Yeah.
Or the Iceman Top Gun.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I mean, personally,
They drink gin.
he was the second best Batman. So, I mean, you could also go that route, too. I don't know how we went on movies, but thanks, Johnny.
It sounded better in my head.
That's all good.
Sorry, Tara.
Nobody can be better than Adam West.
The hard-hitting questions are here. This is Johnny's. I'm going to let him ask this one. Are you going to ask it, John? Now he's embarrassed.
It's your favorite question.
It's your favorite
You might as well
question.
ask it.
You might as well ask
Oh,
it.
that one. Sorry.
Yeah.
It got real serious, and I thought
I'm sorry.
I thought you were-
I can't take you anywhere.
you can't. No, it's been weird. Well, I get a lot of shit about it sometimes from you guys. So
But it's an awesome question.
my question, since we're kind of nearing the end of this awesome interview, if the floodgates opened up and zombies were coming to your door, end of the world scenario, you knew you probably weren't going to make it through the night. What is that one bottle of anything, High West product or unicorn product or something that has that greatest memory tied to it that you would enjoy on your last night?
I don't even have to think about this. It's the Noble Share.
That's so crazy. I love it. It's like I said, I was not gonna like that bottle. They sent it to me. I was like, I'm gonna try this and I'm gonna be polite about it. But I did. I enjoyed it so much, and the guys, they loved it more than I did, which was like even more like, because I was like, no, tequila and bourbon's not a good idea. It's just not. And
It
then-
was-
Where is this bottle?
It's at my house. I'll have to let you try it. You were not here that day. I think you were working at whatever shop you were making plugs for over there in Legend. So, geez, up Pete. But yeah, man, I don't disagree. It's a solid bottle for you to pick in that situation. So, for people that want to find out more about you, more about High West, how to visit, those type of things, how would you recommend them to do that, Tara?
Right. So on Instagram at Drink High West, is a really easy way with the way that people are always on social media. Our website, I believe, is highwest.com. I am just double checking that. Yep, highwest.com. Tons of information there about, our hours and our different facilities that you can visit for different experiences.
Gotcha. And I think don't you all have a newsletter of some sort that people can sign up for?
There is a newsletter, and that can be signed up for on our website as well.
Good deal. Good deal. So if people want to come out, like I assume you guys do all kinds of crazy tours and different things to that nature. How do they get there? Where do they come? Do you only do it? I know you guys have actually a couple of different distilleries, if I remember correctly. Which one do they come to? How does that work?
Yeah. So we have two locations that would be the best locations to visit. And one of those is our distillery in Wanship. We have a refectory there as well. We have an entire food and beverage program where you can have lunch or brunch and do a tour of our distillery, see our operations where we are distilling and barreling at that site. You can also do a tasting of whiskey there, and we've got a great gift shop as well. In Park City, we do have a saloon, which is a restaurant and bar area. We also have a shop where you can buy bottles and some gift type items there as well. And that place is always so busy. So go early, and but the food is great, and the cocktail program is insane. Our bartenders create the most wonderfully amazing, complex cocktails I've ever had in my life. And so I would highly recommend at least coming to our saloon or the refectory up in Wanship and having some cocktails.
Good
All
deal.
right. So just because I'm looking at the website and I'm on there, what are your two favorite cocktails that they
That
make?
they make?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't remember the names of the ones that they had.
Or maybe what is, yeah.
So,
Best you can.
what I will say is really special about our cocktail program is that they design a cocktail menu for each season. And so twice,
Oh, okay. So it's like evolving. It's like each season it evolves.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
and so my team and I will get to go up and, when we can, and taste the cocktails that are going to come out on the new menu, and give feedback, on the alcohol that's coming through and all the balance of all the other flavors. They really do some beautiful things, and I love what they do. Like I said, my cocktail of choice is going to be a double rye old fashioned, and 9 times out of 10 I will drink that, but I will very gladly drink anything off of our cocktail menu.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a plan. Well, Tara, thank you so much for joining us today. We greatly appreciate what you guys do. I tell people all the time, man, if you've not had High West products, you're missing out, because it's one of the best distilleries and one of the best blending companies out there, and you guys really just knock it out of the park, and we greatly appreciate your time. Anything else, guys?
No, just thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we appreciate your time, and if you want to find Bourbon Barrel Talk, you can find us on Facebook, the Instagram, or the X. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, whether you are using iTunes or Pandora or whatever medium you prefer to get your podcast from. If you want to send us a question, send it to bourbonbarreltalk@gmail.com. Tara, if they have a question for you, can they send anything to you directly, or do they need to send it through the website?
I believe they could send that to info@highwest.com,
Good
and
deal.
that would make its way to me.
We want to make sure they can get in touch with you guys just in case they have any questions that they don't send to me directly. So this is Scott, Johnny Tsunami, Nick, Barbara, the legend, Tara, and then Sierra in the background signing off. Peace.